Momentín. Buenos días a todos y a todas.
Hi, good morning to you all. It's a real pleasure to be sharing with you one more day with you, one more year. So this is the second Empodera Live Day in 2019, and the first speaker is Fiza Farhan from Pakistan. She will be talking about energy, empowerment, women, etc. And this is the magic of this event. So Bego and Fiza, please come down to the stage. And to all of you, thank you for coming. I hope you will be enjoying this interview and the rest of the morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure, like Yolanda says, to be here. I'm very grateful to Ciber Voluntarios to give me the chance to talk to Fisa Farhan, this wonderful woman and professional in economics, and you will see that she knows and she's an expert on so many subjects. And we're going to have an open dialogue. I will ask some questions, but you are invited to ask anything, to make comments to her. She's very open to that. She wants to interact with you. So please do, and feel free to do that. So I will introduce very shortly, because she's got a long resume that you can find in social media. She's right now a global advisor for governments, private companies, many institutions around the world, but especially in Pakistan, her home country. And she's also a member of the Secretary General in the high level for the women's empowerment in economics. And she's in the United Nations, so she's going to be talking about all these things that she does. But my first question is going to be a little bit more personal. Like she comes from a background in her studies from economy management, and I want her to explain why did she choose these disciplines and subjects, and who was the people or the stories, in her life to be doing those choices.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me perfectly well? Yeah. Okay. I tend to talk a bit fast. I'm going to try to be slow so that our friends here in the translation box can interpret it for you well. So I'll try to be as slow as I can, but if you guys want me to be slower, let me know, okay? So I come from a very different world. I come from Pakistan, where the world, the culture, the traditions, they're very different from where you guys are from Europe, right? So I like to give you a little context of everything so you can understand my journey better, because it's from a very different part of the world, a very different society. When I was doing college, coming back to your question, I did not know, there were two options for girls. Either you get married immediately after completing your school, or you become a doctor, because doctors make good wives and doctors make good mothers. So, you know, either you get married and become a mother, or you become a doctor, fine, and then you become a mother. I knew I did not want to become a wife immediately. I will become a good wife at some point, which I am now after 15 years. But I hope my husband agrees. But I knew that I did not want to choose the conventional path that every Pakistani woman usually goes through. And I wanted to do something different. I did not know what that different thing was. But I wanted to do something that creates an impact, that makes me proud of who I am every day, that makes my future children to be proud of their mother from Pakistan. But I didn't know what it is. I did not know what it was. So I just chose economics because it was a very general subject. And I knew it is just going to keep me open-minded and open-ended to choose my course of path in the future. If I chose biology or chemistry or engineering, I would be stuck to becoming an engineer or a doctor or So I just went to the university and I saw which is the most open-ended subject I can choose that does not lock me in any one field because I did not know what field I'm going to choose. Who am I going to become? So I chose economics. When I did my graduation studies in Pakistan, the norm of my family, the convention in my family, is to get the girl married off immediately after university, like immediately. And then if the husband wants, she can continue to study. If the husband doesn't want, then too bad, become the good mother. So I knew even then that becoming the good mother is not, it's going to happen, and it has happened now, but it was not back then, 15 years ago. So I then decided to go for my master's. And again, till my master's, I did not know what I'm going to become in life. So I did my MBA in entrepreneurship because it was, again, something fancy, something inspiring, something open-ended, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I promised my parents that I'm going to go for my master's and I'm going to come back and get married, promise, and I'm going to have children, promise. And no, seriously, we had to
worry about you.
Very worried about me. They were like, this one's out of our hands. She's I don't know what we're going to do with this monster. But and now they're super proud of me. So I'm just telling you what was happening 15 years ago and what's happening now.
Well,
they're super proud of me now.
The family pressure,
the family pressure. Imagine, in our family, no girl had ever gone out of the country, out of Pakistan, to do her master's, and that too without a husband. So I was the first one. And when I finally went, and now I must tell you, after me, every girl in my family has gone out for her education.
Oh, wow.
Somebody to Johns Hopkins, somebody to Harvard, somebody to Stanford. So, thank you.
So you opened the...
Yeah, I realized that was the first main glass ceiling I broke. And I realized then that this is my purpose. I have to break glass ceilings. I have to be that rebel that women in Pakistan need, that women in my family need. Because I'm rebelling for the good. I'm rebelling for a purpose. And I'm going to rebel to not just make my life good, but the life of many other women around me good. That's what I decided then. So at least I knew, okay, I'm going to do something for empowering women, for empowering the world, but still did not know what that is, what job it is, where do I apply? What organization is empowering the world? So I did my master's and I did my MBA in entrepreneurship from Warwick Business School in UK. And there I heard stories of Walt Disney, Bill Gates, Richard Branson. And I kept thinking to myself, follow your dreams, follow your passion, do what you believe in, because all these guys did that, and within that they became billionaires, inspirational story characters, right? And I used to think about Walt Disney, I used to dream about all these people, like, McDonald's story, Richard Branson's story. It was an MBA in entrepreneurship. So I realized after that there is no organization that I have to apply to. I have to create my dream myself.
Okay.
Because the impact I want to create, I have to create it myself. I want to change the lives of women. I want to change the lives of the younger generation. I want to focus on problems that nobody's talking about, nobody's thinking about. Nobody was doing that. So I decided after my MBA that I want to become an entrepreneur. That's what I want to become.
That was there is nothing to choose for me.
There's nothing to choose for me.
My resume to any
I
company.
don't want to go to a multinational corporation and sell soap or toothbrush or whatever. I don't want to become an engineer or anything like that. I want to create an impact, but in my own way. Because I was very clear by that time that I have to break glass ceilings. I have to create new realities for myself and for the women around me. I have to focus on those issues that nobody's talking about. I have to focus on those problems that nobody's solving. So I have to identify problems, create solutions, and make a business case out of it.
Okay.
That's what I decided in my master's. And then I came back, and again, everybody thought I'm mad because you've graduated from Warwick Business School, you've done an MBA, and now you're going to go and set up your companies and become a failure again. Are you mad? You're not married, you're a failure in business. You're like, What is wrong with you? But I was, again, by that time, very determined to do what I wanted to do. And against all odds, against all, everybody was pulling me down because I wanted to focus on those development challenges that nobody in Pakistan was even thinking about. So I launched 2 companies back then. One was focusing on renewable energy. One was focusing on women empowerment and access to energy for the 47% of Pakistan that is still living in the dark. I'll just fix this. I think it went down.
So that's when you get into the
the energy sector, yeah. And surprisingly, again, I went into the energy sector. I launched Pakistan's first renewable energy company, which was working on government IPP projects. We did Pakistan's first solar IPP. The first independent 10 megawatt solar power plant was by myself. We did Pakistan's first solar commercial building, first solar ATM, first solar milk chiller, and everybody said it's going to be a failure. Nobody's talking about solar. Nobody's doing solar. Why are you going into this industry of renewable technology? And I said, because nobody's in the sector, that's why it gives me ample opportunity to create anything I want. First mover's advantage, right? And I was pulled down by everybody I knew, from family to friends, that you're doing something nobody's ever done. I said, exactly, that was the point, to do something nobody's ever done, right?
But probably there were some people that really were inspiring this force, no?
So initially, it was just a force to tap this untapped market. But as in how like my teams would always sit with me and say that but this has never been done. And I say, exactly, that's why we're doing it, right? So I was actually, there were many points when even my teams would not believe in what we're doing. But once we started working on these projects, from big solar government projects, 10 megawatt to 50 megawatt, to solar commercial projects, ATMs, milk chillers, commercial projects, to solar village projects. Pakistan has 47% off-grid population. 47% of 220 million people still live in the dark. And we went out there to those areas, and nobody was talking about it. So this was, again, an area for me to work on. So we went and we just explored what the solution can be. So for the first solution was to give them solar energy because sun was shining bright. And the second was to create energy entrepreneurship through women because I wanted to empower the women. So we made a model ourselves. It was just like writing a fairy tale, So you just sit down in your room, make a business model. These are the problems. Okay, problem number 1, no energy. Give them solar solution. Problem number 2, the women are not empowered. Make women the energy entrepreneurs. Problem number 3, there's no awareness on health and education. Okay, let's make a village nurse who will go around town, who will partner with a health company, get pharmaceutical companies involved, create partnerships, and put everything together, put all the ingredients together in a box. And that's how we just started rolling out our projects. And then when the actual projects, when you launch something with passion, you do fail at times, but usually there's success. And when these projects started turning out into international best practices, and the UN Foundation, the UN Habitat, UNICEF, they all came on board to endorse my projects as international best practices, That's when the table turned. That's when everybody started saying, oh, okay, she was thinking something all along. she wasn't that stupid that we were thinking. So that gave confidence to my teams, that gave confidence to the industry. Today we at that time went on to doing some 800 villages, converted them to solar. We were the first company, and today we have around 35 to 40 companies in the solar energy space, working across all these domains, because what we opened up then was a sector, was a virgin market nobody was talking about. So that's what, and then when later I got accredited by different institutions, the projects got accredited, and so it was never, for me, it was never a decision. It was always an evolution based on my passion.
Passion, okay.
Yeah.
So how did these women in Pakistan answer to your proposal to be leaders in such a new sector, energy? I mean, it's kind of weird, or it probably was weird for them, not for these women.
Oh yes, of course it was. And again, the areas that we were working in, they were rural areas, villages, right? Anybody familiar with the region, my friend Gitanjali here obviously is. So anybody familiar with the region knows how conservative our rural life is. The women were obviously very hesitant in the beginning. But again, just like myself, we had to break that first glass ceiling. When you break that first glass ceiling, when you make that first success story, it becomes an inspiration for everybody to follow. So I had to find my leaders. When I went into and I used to go myself. For the first 50, 100 villages, I went myself because I had to prove my point. So I went myself, and I used to meet the shortlisted candidates to become my energy entrepreneurs. We call them Roshna Bibi. Roshna means light in Urdu, in Pakistani language. So we called them Roshna Bibi. So they were light ladies. So they became light ladies. And when I would visit these villages, everybody would call them like Roshna, Roshna come here, Roshna do this. So they became synonymous with light, with hope, with energy access. Energy is hope, energy is light, energy is life. So I used to go to these villages myself and pick up my leaders, you know, my champions. And
those groups.
Talking to those women and identifying who's the one who can stand up against
How
odds.
did you choose those women?
So we had a technical evaluation process. We had a proper evaluation process, but then I used to interview them myself to see who has the burning desire to do something in life. So that tomorrow when I go back home, I'm not going to live in that village. When I'm going to go back home, somebody comes up to her, she can stand up and make a mark.
Right.
You know, because I needed those first 50 game changers, those first 50 Roshna Bibis. And then the remaining would just follow. And then when BBC and when all these TV channels started coming to these villages and interviewing my Roshna Bibis, they became celebrities, you know, in their villages.
Right.
They became the woman of respect. They became the celebrities. And then I started getting calls from other villages that, you know, we want to do the project, make me the Roshna Bibi.
Right, so it was like a ball,
so you have to,
snowball.
Yes, you have to push the first few success stories, and then the universe starts pulling it towards you, you know?
Yeah, so the project with the microfinancing,
Yes.
credits, and
Yes.
That was in that process?
That was separate. So this was energy access through energy entrepreneurs. And then we had a separate project for women economic livelihood development. And that we used to do by giving them access to finance, access to trainings, and setting up the whole business with them in collaboration with private sector companies.
Okay.
So I would, for example, work with Nestle Pakistan and create Nestle rural sales agents. Now these rural sales agents will be my women who I've trained. And in partnership with Nestle, I've given them sustainable economic livelihood.
Okay.
So we had very interesting projects going on throughout the course.
So it was like little by little.
Little by little, every day, during flights, you would think, okay, what are the other problems that we're not addressing, you know? And it was always just list down problems. And I used to say that, you know, bring problems to me. I used to tell my team, bring problems. I thrive on problems, you know, I'm hungry for problems. Because you bring me problems, and then I'm going to just start thinking about basic, naive solutions. I'm not going to create an Einstein formula, some theory of hypotheses. No, just simple math, some simple logic. And then I'm just going to connect the right stakeholders to make it happen. Because you cannot do anything in isolation.
Right.
You cannot do anything by yourself. You're not supposed to do things by yourself. We all have different roles. So then I will see, okay, where do I get the government? Where do I get the private sector? Where do I engage the civil society? Where do I engage the women-led organizations for creating advocacy, for creating awareness? And then I would go to each one of them and tell them what is in it for you.
So what are the
bring them on board.
the challenge in that collaboration? Because you mentioned in government, companies, they all have very different mindsets.
Yeah.
So how did you bring them together to collaborate?
So initially, in my years as the CEO of the two companies, I simply realized that I cannot do this alone. The path that I've chosen, the challenges that I've chosen, I cannot do them alone. I cannot achieve these solutions alone. So I have to partner with all these stakeholders. Initially, it was very challenging because, as you rightly said, every stakeholder has a different language. They have a different expectation. They have a different pace of work. The government and the private sector are two very different entities. Very different worlds. But I would go to each one of them, try to understand their situation, their expectation, and give them a piece of the pie with what is in it for them. What does the government want? They want their federal goals to be achieved. They want their ministerial goals to be achieved. What does the private sector want? Marketing, branding, visibility, profitability. What does the civil society want? Impact, beneficiaries, community problems, livelihoods. So I would go and talk to them in their language, in their understanding, and give them a what is in it for me. So that everybody comes in with a piece of the pie and it becomes a mutually profitable value-added proposition.
Win-win.
Win-win, win-win always. It's also written in my key expertise now, win-win, because I create win-win partnerships. And that same thing is what I'm doing now at a much larger level, with governments, with private sector, with development agencies, bringing multi-dimensional stakeholders together on one table for one development challenge, creating win-win partnerships.
Okay. So that's the work that you're doing with the task force in Pakistan?
No, so
that's another...
That's another one, yeah.
That's another...
Yeah, that's another part of my...
Okay, so tell us about this, because this is a very interesting work also in a governmental level.
Oh, yes.
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 So what are you doing there? Because there are like 16 people that are working together.
Departments.
Departments.
Government departments, yes. So I'll just take you a little back again to understand the context. So I set up those two companies and I led them for about 12 years. And then I got invited randomly by the UN Secretary General to become a member of his high-level panel for women economic empowerment. This high-level panel was a global task force, which was Ban Ki-moon at that time, which had myself, Christine Lagarde, Managing Director IMF, President of World Bank, Executive Director of UN Women, Managing Director of ILO, World Economic Forum, all global leadership, and myself, for some reason, which I still don't know.
Still don't know?
I still don't know.
Yes, we do.
Even till the first meeting, I thought they've made a mistake, and when I'm going to go there, they're going to say, oh, sorry, it was not you. But it happened to be me, so I lucked out. But I call that my professional climax, because in my professional journey, I was set to be this entrepreneur who was creating solutions to problems, impacting people on the ground, creating projects, you know, and working in the field, like with my passion, with my, with my strength. But this, when I sat, and I still remember March 2016, I was sitting in the office of Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, with all of these global leaders, the President of Costa Rica, International Secretary of State UK,
wow.
Minister of Tolerance UAE, Sheikh Al-Lubna. So all these people and myself, and we were deciding what we are going to do for the next 2 years to come up with a global policy of empowering women around the world. And when I came out of that 2-hour meeting, and even there I told them that with all of you guys on the table, World Bank, IMF, ILO, World Economic Forum, United Nations, what can I do for creating a policy, right? So I told them what I'll do is give you an example of what a young woman can do when she's given a platform to empower herself for the woman of her country, for the woman of the world. And that became, I just said it, and then on my flight, and that became a call for action by Pakistan in the United Nations language. And then on my flight back home, I was thinking, okay then, what am I going to do? How am I going to create a case study for the United Nations, being a woman for the woman of my country? And then when I came back, the Chief Minister of Punjab at that time, Punjab, again, guys who don't know Pakistan much, it's our largest province with 50% of the population, 110 million people. So that's the context. He picked me up as his advisor to become on women empowerment as well. And with that, I realized that I just need to explode now in the world out there. And I need to move beyond my focus on my 2 organizations and go out and impact the entire women and youth and all the agendas I work on in Pakistan, in the region, and globally. So that's how I then evolved as an independent advisor, which I am now,
right.
Wearing multiple hats, advising different governments, different private sector, UN agencies, on gender, climate change, and partnerships. Because those lessons I learned back then as an entrepreneur, that we need to create synergies, we need to create partnerships, it still holds. We need to come together to achieve any development goal.
Okay, so it looks like maybe there are some questions. Oh no, I thought you took the.
Solo he
okay.
cogido esto por si acaso.
Oh, okay, okay,
Oh, okay.
okay. But there is one. Okay, I thought there was some people. This.
Hello,
Hi.
Fiza. Thank you so much for to talk with us. I never speak in English. I don't know if you can understand me.
It's fine, we can translate.
Yeah.
But my question is simple. I love your country.
thank you.
I love the Hunza Valley. I love the Rakaposi. And my first trip to Pakistan was last year, but the government of Spain don't recommend travel to Pakistan. And my question is, what's the solution to travel more people to Pakistan, to know the wonderful people in Pakistan, the wonderful places in Pakistan, and what's the solution to open the mind to the European people to understand that when you travel another country like Pakistan, you open your mind and you put a new seats in the woman from Pakistan, the idea that you can sell it and you can choose another kind of life because you can speak with people that another countries. And this is my question, and this is the problem that I put for you.
Thank you. No, that's
because I think this is something important. Thank you.
No, that's a very important question and a very important problem. You're right, Pakistan is wonderful, and many people who from Europe or the US or anywhere outside who end up coming to the country fall in love with it. You can see so many documentaries on Pakistan. You can see so many documentaries about people from Europe who came to Pakistan, did a bike ride till the north and back, and they absolutely fell in love with it because we're just like we're Spanish people. I tweeted this morning that it feels like I'm in Lahore. The love, the warmth, the loudness, the party, you know, we're exactly like that. We're the same. So it's beautiful, it's wonderful. You're right, there are two problems, both external and internal. One is I feel Pakistan has not done a good job with the marketing and branding of the country, like a product. And in my position now as the advisor to the Prime Minister, I'm actually working on this task. We have a Ministry of Tourism set up, and we're actually very actively working because the new Prime Minister is very focused on bringing people to Pakistan, tourism to Pakistan. He's always traveled the world himself. So we are very focused now on working on the marketing and branding of the country, making people see the good part of Pakistan because unfortunately the media likes to follow and showcase only what is going wrong, even if it's going wrong in a little roundabout. I'll tell you a story. I had some friends visiting from Europe once, and we were going around town. We went to dinner, had some nice wine. We were going to another social event. There was a wedding happening, and our weddings are glamorous. And again, Gitanjali, you would know, our weddings are like Bollywood movies, okay? Fantastic. And when we were going happily, on a little roundabout in the city, there were some 50 people standing with some boards protesting for something, right? And entire media of Lahore was surrounding that roundabout and covering that protest. And they were telling me that, you know, if we were back home, this is what we will see. And we will say, oh, Lahore is in chaos again. You know, no, Lahore is not in chaos. Just because 50 people out of 26 million who live in that city decided to spend their night protesting for something doesn't mean the remaining 25 million, God knows what, are not having fun, you know? So it's a matter of perception. Your question on how you can travel, I have visited the Basque countryside 3 years ago where we met, and it was to promote Pakistan because the Baltistan Foundation works in Gilgit-Baltistan, the area you mentioned, and they're headquartered in Basque, Bilbao, San Sebastian. And I came to meet your ministers, and I came to meet other stakeholders to extend relationships between the two countries. And we have set up some guided tours from Basque to go to Pakistan. And they go every year, twice a year. And they love it. I can introduce you to those people. And you can come with them because they'll arrange all the logistics.
And
So see you in Pakistan.
And you invite all of them.
All of you, yes. Come from Basque to Pakistan, okay? I want to see all of you.
¿Otra pregunta?
En español. Hola.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you, Fisa, for your presentation. So my question is, well, I believe in the Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm very committed to achieving them. And you've been working on them for a long time. So can you please talk about your impression of the Millennium Development Goals and the evolution, the Sustainable Development Goals, and why you think they can be achieved now? They can be successful, they can be achieved, and they can have a further impact than the Millennium Development Goals. What's the difference between them?
That's a very important and logical question. Definitely, we're working, many of us in this room are working very actively on the SDGs. I truly feel that there's a lot of good work that's happening, which on various sustainable development goals, especially the ones that I'm looking at, women empowerment and climate change, partnerships, sustainability, economic livelihood, all comes in the middle. But I would say that there's a lot more that needs to be done on every single agenda, because the problems this world faces are too huge. The magnitude of those problems are too huge. For me, the solution, and this is what I keep telling to everybody that I work with, I'm advising UNICEF right now, UNESCO, UNDP, UN Women Regional Office. And people are agreeing to this solution more or so, because now I'm working with them on achieving it, is to create partnerships. We are in 2019 now, 2020 is around the corner. 10 years will fly by, we won't even know, right? And then we'll be sitting in 2030 doing a stock take and seeing, oh shit, the SDGs didn't even work. So then we'll have to come with some CDGs or whatever. Now the problem is, there is a lot of good work already happening in this world. There are lots of good case studies, there are lots of good examples, lots of good innovations, lots of good minds, lots of good human resource already there. What we need to do is stop reinventing the wheel. Stop making the same mistakes again and again. Learn from our mistakes for once and move on with life. We were talking about this last night at dinner as well. So if somebody learned from something in 5 years, we can learn from it in 5 minutes now. And technology brings that together. Technology connects us. I'm sitting here from Pakistan, talking to all of you, and vice versa. This is the ambit of technology, right? So we need to quit brick and mortar models. We need to use technology, embrace technology, create partnerships with the nexus of technology, and bring different stakeholders together so that we scale up each other's work, we accelerate the pace, and only then, I think, we will be able to achieve the SDGs in due course. Because one-on-one, working in silos, working in isolation, I really don't think it's possible. But if we work together, like Captain Planet, put all the forces together, only then we can achieve and accelerate that pace. So that's my take, partnerships and technology.
No hay más tiempo. Okay, I was
One more question.
ask her for the last trip. She was coming from Sweden,
Yes.
and she was talking about
Education
because I think technology, partnership, how to work in partnership, all that it has to be taught at
Yes.
schools.
Yes. Yes.
So what's your reflection on that?
Oh,
I mean, that's the future, I guess. Making another kind of education for the girls and for the boys.
Totally. I'm just coming from Stockholm right now, as Begonia just mentioned. And I was there on the Wing Summit talking about the subject, education in girls, investing in education in girls. Is it a humanitarian case or is it a business case? And at the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on women economic empowerment, we established all the key ingredients that are required for the economic empowerment of women. And we realized that it's a Maslow's hierarchy, and economic empowerment comes at the top. if a woman is economically empowered, if she's financially self-sustainable, then she's legally empowered, she can get social empowerment, she can get political empowerment. The first thing is, the first priority, the first glass ceiling to break is economic empowerment. And with that, we realize that it goes back into education for girls. When you deprive girls of basic education at school level, you're just cutting their legs to achieve any kind of empowerment in the future. You are snipping the roots of a tree before it has the capacity to bear fruit, right? So if you cut off the roots, how will the tree ever grow and bear fruit? So that's the humanitarian case. But with my work in the women empowerment field, we have realized that it's not just a humanitarian case, it's a business decision. There's a huge report by McKinsey, it's called the Gender Pay Parity. It is covered on 500 Fortune companies. I would highly recommend everyone in this room to go through it, and I can provide you with the links. The working of the UN high-level panel was based on that, and that those findings of the report clearly state that because of this gender gap in the world, we're losing out on $26 trillion of global GDP by 2030. The world is going to be short of $26 trillion of global GDP just because we are not putting all women in the workforce. $26 trillion is the combined GDP of United States and China combined today. Imagine the scale, right? And the report also further did surveys and found out that companies with more women on management positions and boards had 28 to 32% higher returns than companies that were not gender balanced or that did not have women. It's a simple logical rationale. You're serving the clients which are men and women. On the other side of the table too, you need to have men and women. Right brain, left brain. Biology works like that. We coexist. You know, when we coexist in nature, when we coexist in creation of children, how can we not coexist in economy? And this has all been proved with facts, with logic, with survey of 500 Fortune companies. And it all goes back to access to education. You need to give access to education to girls so they can get the equal opportunity to enter the workforce like boys and grow, not just to contribute to themselves and their families, but to contribute to the GDP of the world.
Well, it's a pity, but we have to finish, and I had to thank you for bringing us some magic, because I believe that you had some sayings that you believe in magic.
I believe in magic. I believe in magic every day, yes.
Thank you very much for your burn heart to fight and to carry on fighting.
Yeah, why not?
And hopefully many people will be inspired and will be doing many things like you.
Yeah.
We need many visas in the world.
Absolutely. I would love to see many visas in the world, but yeah, let's keep the burning desire on. Let's keep believing in ourselves. And let's create our professions into our passions, because that's when success is there for all of us. So yeah, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
Vale. Buenos días.
Hi, good morning. Fisa Farem, woman of light. Fisa Farem, a woman of light. You pave the way and you break all the broken gaps for the roots. You open the door to the pause, to your impact, to your decision. And there are fireflies that light the way.
Ahora es el turno de Gitanjali.
Now it's Gitanjali's turn, and Juan Zafra is also going to tell us about how technology can help us have social impact. Hello, Gitanjali. Thank you very much. Thanks to Jorge, thanks to Yolanda for inviting us and having us here.
You and with everyone here. To be honest with you and with the people here, it's an enormous responsibility for me to be here with leaders as Yolanda, as yourself, as Fiza, as Nerea, as Irene. So I prefer to speak in Spanish, if you don't mind, to be sure, to be fluent in the conversation. I would like to introduce you in Spanish then. Gitanjali, probablemente ya...
You probably know Gitanjali from the opening we had yesterday morning. She specializes in developing programs, and she has collaborated with several UN agencies for development. And now she is working on technologies at the International Telecommunications ITU, and she has also worked for UNESCO. She focuses on developing policies for ICT's development, so that ICTs can help achieve the SDGs. And now she focuses especially on coordinating the summit, the World Summits of the Information Society, which is also an initiative of the ITU. She is also she holds a PhD from the Cambridge University, and she has studied in India. And
a lot about SDG. Oh, sorry, I said in Spanish. Okay, sorry. Leemos muchísimo.
We are hearing and reading a lot about the SDGs and other major development programs from the UN, and sometimes it seems that it's too big and a little bit overwhelming. So I would like to start by two basic questions. How is your daily work, and what do you do when you arrive at your office? And secondly, what can I do, and what can every one of us do in our daily lives in order to achieve those sustainable development goals?
And good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate Fiza for being the strong woman that she is, and Yolanda, because we need these kind of women to bring about a change in the world. So well done, and please keep it up. And also in this conference, I think I do see a 50-50 participation, and that is extremely important. So well done to the organizers, because it's very important to see equality in gender participation. So how does my day start? Well, I'm exhausted by the time I reach office, because I'm the mother of a 4-year-old. So by the time he's in school, you're like exhausted. But the minute I reach my office building, I'm excited, I'm passionate, and I'm ready to do all the work that, is waiting for me to be done. Basically, as Fiza also said, basically anyone working in the development world cannot work if they do not have a deep passion for what they are doing. Now, you really need to feel the need to do what you're doing, otherwise you really can't do it. So what is my job? Basically, my job is to ensure that all people around the world are included in global policy making. So whether it is women, it is peoples with disabilities, it is the youth, it's the older persons, they are all included in the digital transformation that is taking place right now. And that is what I do by way of a global process called the World Summit on the Information Society. This summit was set up in 2003 and 5 by the United Nations. And like I mentioned yesterday, it was the first multi-stakeholder event of the UN system, which meant that it was inclusive right from the beginning. All stakeholders were invited to contribute to the decision-making processes. The private sector, academia, civil society, all had an equal footing as the government officials sitting in the room. So that is the beauty of the work that I do to ensure inclusiveness in the policy processes, the global policy processes that are taking place, so that inclusiveness of regions, that extremely important as well, that we ensure that the needs of Latin America are as well included as the needs of Asia and Africa. So a level playing field, Europe is provided to the world, and an opportunity is provided so that they can be part of the digital transformation that is taking place.
But exactly what do you do? You talk with the government,
Exactly.
you talk with the companies?
Yes, I talk to a lot of people. I work with 32 UN agencies on nearly like a day-to-day basis. So FAO for agriculture, health is, WHO, gender is UN Women. So, it's a lot of talking, lot of coordination. And as we've been hearing since the past 2 days out here, partnership, collaboration, coordination amongst different stakeholders is really the key to any program or anything that's happening
You
there.
read a lot about public policies and
Read a lot about public policies, and we work on resolutions. So basically, we have UN resolutions in the UN General Assembly, and internally within the ITU, we have our own resolution on WSIS. So there are 2 parts of my job as well. One is internal within the ITU to ensure that, and that we work a lot with our own members. So government officials, mostly from the Ministry of ICT, regulatory bodies, big private sector companies, all working in the area of telecommunications, to ensure that they are including the goals and the values of WSIS, of inclusiveness in whatever policy making that's taking place. And on the other hand, my role, like I told you, is to work with all the wide stakeholders that are existing, like could be Yolanda from Cyber Volunteers, civil society, academia, University of Barcelona. It could be, a small NGO in India or Pakistan. So, it's a huge, it's basically my day-to-day work is connecting people, and connecting people to make the world more inclusive for digital transformation. I guess this is it.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Do you make recommendation to the stakeholder, to the government, to the companies, to the academia?
Yeah, so it's all a bottoms-up process. And for example, I can just give you, we work in collaboration with all stakeholders. The agenda of the WSIS Forum, the main event that I coordinate, which happens every year, to look at the implementation of the different goals that we have, like ICT infrastructure, cybersecurity, health, agriculture, the agenda is built in a bottom-up framework. So there is a form online which anyone could fill up and tell us what they want to see happening at the event, to bring in the regional, national, perspectives into this global event. So we never, it's usually like a collaborative, multi-stakeholder setup where we come up with decisions, and it's never a top-down approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. Don't be polite, please.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with the attitude of government and global corporation in the information society? Are there public policy or their business strategies designed to empower citizens or not? Prometí en español. Bueno, le digo que no sé
I promised to speak in Spanish, but I didn't. I asked whether she feels comfortable with the government policies and the corporate policies, and whether she thinks that they are oriented to the citizens.
The UN exists to create a fair level playing field, you know, where people with conflicting views and ideas can sit around the table and come to a conclusion, that consensus that everybody exists in, that everybody agrees with, you know. So that is our role, to ensure that, you know, all the 193 member states that are working with us, the different private sector companies that work with us, they all come to a conclusion that is agreed to by everybody. You know, so it's not that, you know, one member state would say something and we would have to sit with them to get them to agree to it. Basically, everybody sits around the table and agrees to the policies that are made. And that's the role of the UN. That's the role that we play, a mediation role, that we get everybody to agree on certain resolutions, certain decisions that are taken to take our work forward.
Sometimes this is a slow
Yes,
way.
sometimes it could be a very slow process, I agree. Yes.
Do you dare, te atreves a describir
Would you dare describing your ideal future?
el future
Well,
you are
ITUs.
working to get?
Yes.
Which
So our job is to ensure that, you know, ITU statistics shows that basically half the world has access to internet, you know, but the other half still doesn't have access to internet. And coming from the developing world, and I spent nearly 15 years working in the slum areas of Delhi and around Delhi to understand the value ICT brings, the economic and social upliftment that ICTs bring to the people living around there. So that's very important for us, to bring those people, connect them, and bring them to the benefits that ICTs could bring. I visited a village in Thailand that I mentioned yesterday, that they are getting 300% economic profits, 300%, you know. And these are people who did not have access to those external markets at all. A lot of women entrepreneurs have come up. The village headman has come back from Bangkok to serve his village. He's a telecom engineer, but because of the economic opportunities he sees with this rural connectivity, very important. It's very important to connect the rural areas and low-income areas in the developing world and bring them the benefits of technology. I guess that is our goal.
You said me last night that you don't travel a lot.
Yes, I don't travel much. We are saving the carbon footprints, yeah. So we don't travel much. Even during our event, we have remote participation for each and every session that we have. So we have more than 300 workshops taking place, but you could connect from wherever you are in the world. You could even pose questions. You could be visible on the screen. So we are making maximum use of technology to be able to reduce the impact on climate change. And we are very proud to say that we are a paperless organization. So we do not use paper at all in ITU. It's a very difficult thing. It's change management, especially in a UN organization, especially when you're working with ministers and member states from all over the world. But I believe that, you know, it has really reduced a lot of unnecessary paper that we used to use. We do not print any publications. We don't even print the agenda of any of our events. But we use technology to promote, you know, these things.
So what happened with these countries or region that having access to internet or to the technology? You travel there, and what kind of job?
Yes, of course, like when it is necessary to show our commitment and to be here. So that's why I am also here, because, you know, we really feel the need to encourage the work that small NGOs like Cyber Volunteers are doing, you know, to promote the use of ICTs at a national and regional level. So it's very important to show your gratitude to some of the real work that civil society organizations are doing. So of course we travel for that, but we try to avoid as much as possible.
To be concrete, I would like to know which kind of recommendation do you make to reduce the inequality, woman inequality, young inequality, or person with disability inequality?
So ITU as an organization is doing a lot of work in all these things, but I could tell you about my own project about WSIS. For example, the main motive of WSIS is to create awareness and to create partnerships and connect people. So what we started was to popularize the use of ICTs for disabled. We actually had initiated a full day track to bring about awareness about what kind of technologies exist, first of all, for the disabled, what do they want from us, and what kind of policies should be made to ensure that persons with disabilities are included in all the decision-making processes. So we also made some innovations, like we had sign language interpretation for the first time in our meetings, so that people with disabilities could follow everything that we were doing out there. We had extremely innovative startups like the ones we heard yesterday. There were some startups that were looking at how mobile phones can be used for the visually impaired, how we could have machine learning captioning for the people who cannot hear, So these things are, assistive technologies which are actually improving the lives of persons with disabilities. And it's such a simple thing to do. It's an innovation to include in whatever we do so that it's accessible. For women, we have a 50-50 challenge to ensure that all our meetings, our events are gender balanced, and we have women and men participating in the meetings. All the letters that go from our Secretary General include a line saying that we would request you to have gender balanced delegations. So it's a huge change, and like we heard from the previous speaker, we come from different cultures, and the whole, the UN is about how different cultures are melting in a pot, So it takes time, we do take time to change, but eventually it all works. Like I said, we had 60-40 participation in our event last year, which was amazing,
¿Quién financia estos programas?
Who's funding these programs? Is it the ITU? Does the ITU fund programs for startups aiming at reducing the inequality?
So, like I said, ITU has three departments, and they do a lot of work, so many of them fund startups as well. But in our case, WSIS is an extra budgetary activity, and because all governments believe in the power of inclusiveness and the potential to have policies to implement and to get all multi-stakeholders together, we get funding from the governments and a lot of private sector organizations to actually continue all our WSIS related activities. So I think at the end, in today's world, your work matters. I mean, if you're doing good work, you would get the funding. If you're not doing good work, you would not get the funding. So in today's time, it's very clear. People have priorities. People know what they would like to see at the end. And if you're able to deliver in the UN system as well, there is a huge crunch. Like, we don't have money. So that's why we don't travel. We don't, we're trying to save. We have very small teams. Basically, the entire WSIS process is coordinated by me and one more person. So, so it's a very, we try to make use of limited resources. That's why partnership and, coordination amongst organizations is so important.
And if there are projects from other organizations or companies aligned with your goals, can they resort to the ITU?
So you can see, like for the WSIS Forum, we get 3,000 participants from all over the world and more than 350 workshop organizers. So you can imagine that all these guys from all over the world, and what we ensure is that there is regional equality, like everybody from different regions are there. There is equality in, like we said, gender, youth. So it's a very, most people are aligned with the work we do because this is what they want to see, inclusiveness in digital transformation.
Creo que es...
I think it's time for some questions or thoughts, feedback.
Más preguntas.
Can you listen? Yeah.
Yes.
My question is about data. As data is like the new resource of the one of the 20th century, 21st century, I would like if your department is working on it, or is there any projects to create value from that resource in solving all the problems we're talking about. Thank you.
Yes, of course, data is one of the things that technology brings. And, you know, in the ITU, we have study groups. Study groups, they consist of member states, governments, private sector, and all members of the ITU who discuss solutions and standards to different aspects of technology. So there is a study group that discusses data as well, where experts from all over the world, including academia, talk about how they could find a solution and a global standard to all these problems that are associated with technology. So I could link you up to the group that is discussing the data questions, and then you could take it from there.
Hola, gracias.
Hello, thank you. Here's my question. Can a small organization get in touch with your office? How can they do it? How can they join any of your programs? Because we know these resources do exist, but sometimes smaller associations, such as the ones we have represented here, we have associations from the rural world, how can they get in touch with you?
Please send me an email. I'll be very happy to work with you because if you go to our website, it's www.wis. Oh, there were supposed to be some slides playing at the background, but they're not here. So the website is www.wisis.org/forum. So you will see a page out there which says calls to action. Okay, just fill up that form, and basically the WSIS forum is open to everybody. You know, you could fill it up and it's free of cost for everybody to join and to contribute your ideas. So please do write to me, and then we would take it from there. No problem at all. The more the better. WSIS is like a movement, you know, and it's like a movement that all of us have to join hands to ensure that we are able to provide that inclusiveness and bring the half of the population that is offline, online, you know. So please, all of you do join us and write to me. I'll be very happy to connect with you.
This is a very useful information.
Yes.
Right.
And my email is just my name, gitanjali.shah@itu.int. So please write to me. We are open and inclusive.
Thank you. No. ¿Alguna? Ya, sí, es que...
Any other questions? Last question.
Well, thank you to be here and to be very inspirational. I had this question about, might be quite difficult, but how do you make it to equilibrate the weight at a decision-taking chance when listening to small, humble organizations, as she was mentioning, and big corporates, big academic institutions, and give a little power to everyone, so the decision is well balanced, and we know how it affects to everybody. Thank you.
Yes, so like I told you that this is one of the first UN processes that had equal decision-making powers for all stakeholders. And in 2015, we had a review of the WSIS process. Like you had a review of the MDGs that converted into SDGs, we also had a review of the WSIS process. And we opened it up, it was a multi-stakeholder process to negotiate each and every action line. So ICT infrastructure, cybersecurity, all these different action lines that are implemented by different UN agencies. And every stakeholder, like a small NGO to a big corporation to a government, had an equal footing in the negotiation process. Like we were doing it on site and we were changing the words in front of everybody, you know, in the document. So that is the beauty of the WSIS process, that we are not stuck with any norms that, you know, but we are open and inclusive to all stakeholders. So yes, it's everybody's voice is included.
Is a topic in your, is an issue in your job, question as privacy, related with data, privacy, or the fake news phenomenon is an issue in your job?
Yes, of course. So fake news comes under our action lines on cybersecurity and ethics and media, you know. So ethics and media is implemented by UNESCO. So we work closely with UNESCO in implementing anything that concerns the ethics of the use of ICTs. And media, like for example, the safety of journalists and things like that. It's all done by our very close partner, UNESCO. And ITU, of course, our core job is to look at cybersecurity issues and stuff like that. So we work in collaboration with our different UN agencies. And WIPO is also World Intellectual Property Right Organization, is also a very close partner in this area. To ensure that, you know, these kind of things are fought with, because fake news is becoming actually a very big global problem, you know. And especially in countries like, of course, even like India. I mean, you know, we have billions of people there, and one fake news can create, yeah. So it's becoming a huge problem as well. So we do work with governments to come up with policies that could help cater to these.
Do you work together with media to get your objectives, or not?
We don't work as much with media in that sense, but I think UNESCO works a lot with media. So every UN agency has their respective mandates as well. So UNESCO as a UN agency has a mandate to work with journalists and print media and social media and stuff like that. Yeah.
And what about the big platforms as Facebook?
Yes.
Do you
Yes,
work together with?
Yes, we do work closely with Facebook, and Facebook actually comes every year to the WSIS Forum as well, because they understand the true potential of processes like WSIS. They are also a sector member of the ITU, because ITU is one of the UN agencies that opened its membership to the private sector, the academia, and very recently tech startups. So all the tech startups here, if you would like to be a member of ITU, we'll be very happy to welcome you to our community.
Yeah. So social media can do a lot to fight the inequality too.
Yes, yes, of course.
Are they doing?
Oh. So I think you asked.
Are they fighting the inequality? Is the last.
You need to finish. You need to finish.
Don't be polite. Finish. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
2 minutes.
So I I think one of the questions you asked me yesterday was, how can you use your mobile?
Oh, yes,
Yes,
it was the second one.
Yes.
¿Qué puedo hacer con mi móvil to eliminar la desigualdad, para eliminar la...
To remove inequality.
Puedo ayudar a tus objetivos.
How can I contribute to your goals?
Very powerful tool for many people in rural areas, okay? So first of all, to communicate in local regional languages. You know, that's a very important thing, to communicate with people in local regional languages. It's being used for e-banking in many places in Africa and in Asia. It's been used to actually reduce the carbon footprint, the waste that we produce, because we do not really have to print anything. Like today when I'm flying, I'm just going to scan my boarding pass. I don't need a paper, you know. So you could use your mobile phone as a very powerful tool, economically, socially, to connect to, you know, your old grandparents, to bring them joy. So there are lots of things that you could do using a mobile phone and contribute to, you know, the development process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go to change the world, so with my phone.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
One moment. Oh, Gitanjali?
Bueno, el poema se titula Gitanjali, es para ella.
This poem is, the title is Gitanjali. The poem is for her because I love her name. It's very poetic. Gitanjali. Dawn. It's dawn and the world is awakened. The world is now connected by the wish to have an egalitarian board. Only the stopwatches are sleeping because now is the time for Gitanjali.
day of Empodera Live, and my warmest welcome to Gary Hilleman. Welcome, Gary. At these times, all of us, the entire world, are witnessing a deep and silent revolution. A revolution which is changing the way we pay, the way we create value, and the way we trust each other. It's a hard revolution to understand and difficult to explain. It's the blockchain revolution. In order to help us to understand it, we have with us one of the main experts in the world in blockchain and cryptocurrency. This expert is Gary Hilleman. Gary was born in Seattle, but he moved to London to study in the London School of Economics and in Cambridge University. In the beginning, his focus was investment banking, but something happens. Lehman Brothers fall 11 years ago. Gary realized that something was wrong, and he moves to a new focus of the value of the money, of the trust, on the way the economic works. And in order to share with us this knowledge, Gary has the word. Tell something more about you, Gary, please.
Thank you for the warm introduction. Let me just start by saying it is a real honor to be at this amazing event with Yolanda, who's trying to take my picture right now. No, but it's a real honor. This is a special event. It inspires me to try even harder, to do a better job in my area, given all the great work that people are doing here. So thank you for having me. Before I say more about myself, I did want to ask una pregunta. My Espanol is muy mal, but...
My Spanish is very bad, but I want to make a question. How many people here have bitcoins u otras criptodivisas?
10 y... Bueno. So that's amazing. In 11 years, almost 11 years that Bitcoin has been around, we've seen it grow to have probably 20 million or more people now that actually own some cryptocurrency. And I first learned about Bitcoin in 2011 at the London School of Economics during my PhD. And I was studying the financial system and the macroeconomy and trying to understand the 2008 financial crisis, why this had happened, will it happen again? And I watched many things that were attempted to address the problems that created the Lehman Brothers collapse and the 2008 crisis. We saw regulatory reform. We saw things like Dodd-Frank passed by the US Congress and the so-called Volcker rule to prevent investment banks like the one I used to work at from gambling and crashing the financial system. But today the Volcker rule is being deleted. I saw things like Occupy Wall Street, people mobilizing in the streets to protest the corruption and the inherent unfairness of our financial system. But Occupy Wall Street died. And I realized that if you really want to change the financial system, if you really want to create a fairer, more transparent, more equitable, more efficient financial system, you need to change the software. You need to change the infrastructure. This is the only way to create lasting impact and change around money in our financial system. And I believe blockchain technology is a very important step in that revolution.
Gary, where does the money come?
This is a great question, and one of the first questions I began all my lectures asking my students, because it's very hard to understand Bitcoin if you don't first understand money. And where does the money come from? It grows on trees, right? The paper, it's actually, in the United Kingdom, some of our banknotes are plastic now, so it no longer grows on the trees, but this is the joke. I think many people recognize that the bills and the coins in our pockets, they are minted, they are manufactured by the central bank. Those are created by the central bank, a government institution or quasi-government institution. But that is a tiny percentage of our money supply. That's only 5%. And so the next question is, where does the other 95% come from? Where does the vast majority of our money come from?
Some ideas? Anyone knows?
Yeah, most people don't know the answer to this question. In my experience, in the hundreds of lectures I've given in the last 6-7 years, the answer of where most of our money comes from is it comes from banks. Banks create the vast majority of our money. Banks like Santander, HSBC. When you go to ask for a loan to buy a house, to get a mortgage, new money is created. And this is not widely understood. It's not taught even in many economics 101 classes. And it's very important to understand that's the current system we have to understand also how Bitcoin works.
And then, where does cryptocurrency comes from?
So 11 years ago, this mysterious person named Satoshi Nakamoto published a paper describing Bitcoin and shared it with just a small number of people who received it and said, this will never work. We've tried this before. In fact, we've been trying to create cryptocurrency for almost 40 years. The story of cryptocurrency begins long before the story of Bitcoin. And so there was a lot of skepticism when Bitcoin was released by the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto 11 years ago. But it's been working. It's been working and operating for over 10 years, and its value has been increasing, and more people are using it. And now you see companies like Facebook launching their own cryptocurrencies in just 10 years. It's a minor economic miracle what cryptocurrency has achieved in such a short time. In fact, the first personal Bitcoin is often compared, Bitcoin and blockchain are often compared to the internet, as big a revolution as the internet. All right, the first protocol of the internet, TCP/IP, was invented in the early 1970s, and it took over 20 years until the 1990s for the internet to have tens of millions of users like Bitcoin. The first personal computer was invented in 1971, and it took another 9 years until the first personal computer sold over 1 million units. And so Bitcoin and blockchain technology are already achieving a level of growth in the network that is equal to or greater than some of the most important technologies of the last 40, 50 years.
How could you define the blockchain technology in a simple way in order to everybody to understand?
Yes. The blockchain is basically a database. It is also sometimes called a ledger, but it's a very special type of database because it allows for people who do not trust each other or it allows people to exchange value and interact without requiring that they know or trust each other. So the two things I was told when I was a kid, and actually I was a little old for this, but don't get into a car with strangers, and don't go meet anyone that you first met on the internet. But now with technology, with Uber, we do exactly this. You get into a car with a stranger who you connected with on the internet. Right? So blockchain, in some ways, does something similar. It allows you to interact economically with someone you don't really know, and you don't need even to trust them. That's one of the magic things about it.
In which industries blockchain is changing faster at this time?
So financial services is clearly receiving the most focus, and part of the reason is because Bitcoin, the first killer app of blockchain, was a financial instrument. But you also see blockchain being used in government, in healthcare, in elections, people voting on a blockchain. That's one of I think one of the most interesting potential non-financial use cases is to use blockchain to solve voting corruption and illegitimate elections around the world.
Okay, first we are talking about banks, and then we'll talk about politics. Are in danger actual banks in the world? They can collapse like Lehman Brothers with blockchain?
So the financial system is inherently unstable. We know from the theories developed by the economist Hyman Minsky that there is an instability and an unstableness to the financial system, and it is always just a matter of time before the next financial crisis. We don't always know when. If you ask me when, Garrick, is the next financial crisis, I have no idea. It could be tomorrow. It could be another 10 years from now. But I can tell you for sure that with our current financial system, we will have another financial crisis. We always do. It's a part of the design. Will blockchain prevent financial crises? Not necessarily. It depends on how we design our new financial system. But what I do think blockchain can do is maybe help prevent some of the bad behavior, some of the cheating, some of the crazy stories you hear. John Corzine, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, he ran a financial services firm called MF Global, and unbeknownst to his customers, he took their money and he went and speculated on European sovereign debt. All right, his customers did not know that he was doing this, and it was a bad trade. He blew up MF Global. The reason he could do that was because there was a lack of visibility, a lack of transparency into how he was moving his customers' money. And blockchain would help prevent that kind of obfuscation, the invisibility, the opaqueness in today's banks, in our financial system today.
The company where you work, blockchain.com, offer people to be their own bank. What does it mean?
This is a really powerful idea, and it starts with Bitcoin and what Bitcoin enables. Cash, Bitcoin is in some ways similar to cash. Whoever holds it controls it. And with cryptocurrencies, you have what's called a private key. It's like a password. This is the thing you need to protect if you want to prevent someone from taking your Bitcoin. And we help our millions of users manage that private key. But when you control the private key, you are your own bank. No one can come like they did in Cyprus in 2013 and tax the deposits in the bank 10% in a surprise taxation. Even though there was deposit insurance in Cyprus, Cypriots woke up one morning and saw their bank balance 10% lower than it was. And the reason that is possible is because they are using a bank, and banks can take away your funds. But there's much more powerful, I think, examples of what being your own bank can do than simply protecting your wealth. I think it's an empowering, possibility, because you start to also earn the interest and the profits and cut out the middleman and reduce transaction fees and send money overseas for a much lower cost when you're your own bank than when you rely on someone else to do that, and they charge you 20% to send money to sub-Saharan Africa. Or they charged me when I was a student at the London School of Economics. This is right at the time I was first discovering Bitcoin. I was also elected to be research student officer at the London School of Economics, student government, and there were 300 Americans like myself studying at the LSE who were receiving student loans from America. And the 300 students, we were paying each year $150,000 in fees to the money transfer agent that moved the student loan money from the United States over to the UK. 300 students were paying $150,000 each year. That was added to our student loan debt just to convert from the dollars to pounds to pay our tuition. at the London School of Economics. So this isn't just a problem that affects the world's unbanked, the billions of people who live in the cash economy, who use systems like Western Union. It also affects students, in advanced countries, the inefficiency of our system.
As you checked before, we have 15 people in this place who has money in Bitcoins. Would you say that their financial behavior is more or less risky than other people with another assets?
It depends on how much Bitcoin you own. My personal view is that everyone today should own some cryptocurrency. I think it's become a legitimate asset class, and the good news is that even if you don't have disposable income to invest in cryptocurrency, there are ways to actually get cryptocurrency for free through companies like ours, blockchain.com. We gave away, through what we call an airdrop, $125 million of one of the top 10 cryptocurrencies, Stellar, this past year. And this is really important because there's really, there's 4 ways to get cryptocurrency. You can mine it, which is very difficult. You can buy it, but that's hard to do, and a lot of people around the world don't have the money or are not able to connect their bank account to an exchange to buy it. You can try to earn it to get paid in cryptocurrency, but I invite you to go ask your boss, like some people are doing today, to please pay me in cryptocurrency and see what they say. Or you can give it away. You can give it away through an airdrop. That's the easiest way to get people some exposure to cryptocurrency. And if you don't have some, I'm sorry to make a commercial announcement, but I strongly encourage you to do so, and blockchain.com is one of the best places to do that, in my opinion.
You talk about the miners. Is there any miner in this room? No? Who and how are the miners? I feel very curious about it.
This is a complicated area, but it's an important part of the way blockchain systems work, like Bitcoin. The miners are people who are running the software for the network, and they provide the security for the network. Today, many miners are in China because the electricity is free or very inexpensive there. Miners will go where there's cheap electricity. But they get compensated for providing the security, for powering the network, and for processing transactions with new cryptocurrency that's paid to them by the software protocol, and also transaction fees. And this is a very important system. There's a controversy around the miners. I get a lot of questions from the media about the energy consumption of Bitcoin miners, that Bitcoin miners are consuming as much energy as a small country like Slovenia, and it's significant. There's no question about it. But it's also a complicated subject. There's a lot of renewable energy that's being used to power it. This is important in my opinion, and if you compare the mining, the real world mining to produce the metals in our coins, to power the data centers at payment processors like Visa and MasterCard, the energy footprint of cryptocurrency is probably less than our traditional financial system. So it's not as big a problem, in my opinion, as the media makes it sound.
Anyway, cryptocurrency is more and more present in our lives. In fact, it's already in our smartphones. Facebook has recently launched his own cryptocurrency, Libra. What's your opinion about Libra? Risk, advantages?
Yeah. Does anyone have any privacy concerns about Facebook? Yeah, me too. So Facebook is persona non grata in many capitals around the world, in Washington, D.C., Cambridge Analytica. So I knew some of the professors involved with this Cambridge Analytica scandal. It's a disaster. And one of the pieces of good news about blockchain is it does have privacy-enhancing features. That's one of the promises of blockchain technology, is to help build more privacy into our financial transactions, but also our digital identity and other areas of our lives. And Facebook's Libra design potentially could make a positive impact on privacy. Now, I think we need to be skeptical. We need to say, show us, don't tell us, right? Show me, do not tell me. And I would like to see Libra launch. I think it would be a mistake for Europe, as France and Germany recently announced, to block Libra. I think it needs to be regulated. I think it needs to be controlled. But the reality today is it's still too expensive to send money across borders. We need more competition. We need more innovation and pressure from companies like Facebook to create a way to transfer funds seamlessly around the world. Sending money should be like sending an email or a text message. It's free and it's instant to send a message on WhatsApp or using email. Money should be like this in many ways. Now, that's not going to work for people who use cash. Cash will always be slower, and a lot of the people that Facebook wants to help, the unbanked, the billion people with no identity around the world, these people use cash today, and Libra will not probably help them, but it's a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
In which way blockchain can help to a better democracy, to more freedom, to a more sustainable future? Yes, about the governments, about the voting, how it will change the society in the next 10 years.
Yes.
In your opinion?
So I think, a new financial system where we have more transparency, more fairness, that's the main near-term solution. But let me talk about voting briefly, because I think this is a totally different use of the technology that's potentially even, as powerful, if not more transformative. So today, when you cast a vote, maybe in Spain it's different, but in the United States or in Britain, when I vote, there is no way for me to check if my vote was counted. No way to check. It's a complete act of faith when you vote, all right? And, maybe someone counts your vote and you're lucky. Maybe someone changes your vote. You have no idea. So imagine a different world where when you vote using a unique pseudonymous alphanumeric ID, so some string of letters and numbers that represents you that only you know, you use that to vote, and you can check on the internet, there's my alphanumeric ID, there's my vote, and I can see it's in the column for the candidate or the issue I voted for, and I can audit the result. I could even check to see how many alphanumeric IDs are there. Is it greater or less than what I would expect the population to vote? And you could see the results. You could audit to see that your vote had been counted. I mean, that could be a complete game changer for many countries where there's, major election fraud, huge illegitimacy. And when there's an illegitimate election, it has many, many knock-on effects. It's not just that the wrong candidate is elected. The cost for that government to borrow money increases because, the market knows that the government is illegitimate, and there's always a concern that any debt that is lent to a developing country that has an illegitimate government will be deemed odious and erased after a legitimate government is installed. So the cost of borrowing goes up. That makes it harder to develop public sector goods. Lots of knock-on effects. So changing the elections, I think, could be a major use case for blockchain.
Okay, at this point, I have no doubts that blockchain is a valuable tool to the empowerment of people, which is one of the focus of the but perhaps some has any doubts. So the time for you to make the question. The first question. Only 10 minutes for the questions.
cryptocurrency is like any currencies, and there are many of them, and I think even Nicolás Maduro has his own cryptocurrency of choice. So which one would you recommend? Bitcoin, Ethereum? Because which one would you trust most? And second is the wallets. Third question is the speculation about the financial bubble, the tulips of the 17th century. I don't know if it's really going to be an issue or if it's just, a lie.
Thank you.
You say.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I appreciate the questions. So first, let's start with the tulip bubble. The price of tulips going up in Holland 400 years ago and crashing. So this is what's happened to Bitcoin's price in the last 10 years. Up, down. Up again, down. Up even higher, down. Up even higher, down. It goes up and down and up and down. Tulips went up and went down and it never went back up. So it's a very different type of price action. And, it's true that cryptocurrency is extremely volatile. And this is why, it's important that you understand the risks of owning cryptocurrency. And, people sometimes say Bitcoin is a store of value. I personally am not comfortable with that term because last year Bitcoin lost 85% of its value. And so something that can lose 85% of its value in a single year, to me, is hard to defend as a store of value. But what it is it's scarce. There's a finite number of Bitcoins, 21 million, that will ever exist. And it's also the oldest cryptocurrency. And so I'm not going to necessarily give an endorsement of a particular cryptocurrency. But what I will say is the Lindy effect is a phenomenon where the longer something has been around, the greater the chance that it will be around in the future. So, for example, I know Jack Dorsey came to this conference very early in its history. I met Jack Dorsey in London a few months ago. He is focusing exclusively on Bitcoin at Square, his company, in part because Bitcoin has been around the longest and has the greatest chance to be around the longest. And when you have a company like Square or a company like blockchain with a large engineering group and you have to build a product and invest a lot of resources, you need a high degree of confidence that what you're building will not be obsolete next year or in 3 or 4 years, right? So, Bitcoin is, I think, the strongest and most dominant cryptocurrency for good reason. Now, your other question about wallets and people losing their funds. This happens regularly in the cryptocurrency space, and this is part of the maturity process for a new technology of blockchain technology. There are risks with owning crypto assets. There are risks when you are your own bank. When you carry cryptocurrency around on your phone, it's like carrying cash. And so there are ways to safely carry or use cryptocurrency where you're not walking around with a lot of cash or the digital cash equivalent. I think you should also be careful about which companies and wallets you use. Again, blockchain, we've been around since 2011, 8 years. So we've been protecting people's funds for a long, long time. There are other companies who have also been around a long time that are doing a good job, but you do need to be careful. One of the biggest problems is when people decide to store their cryptocurrency with someone, like at an exchange, and the exchange gets hacked. That's been one of the biggest problems. Mt. Gox is a very famous example of this. When you are your own bank, you are not at risk to that type of attack.
So you buy at your own risk.
Yes.
Please, shorter questions and shorter answers. Next question.
What do you think about machine learning and AI oriented to automatic transactions?
Sorry, I didn't quite capture. Do you want to do español or?
Lo digo en inglés. ¿Qué piensas acerca de?
What do you think about machine learning and the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to the automation of some tasks, financial tasks?
I think automation is one of the most powerful, processes of our time. Smart contracts, which many people think are the killer application of blockchain technology. We didn't even get a chance to even talk about smart contracts, but they, imagine, I'll give an example of flight insurance. Okay, so today in just the UK, each year, there's about 600,000 people whose flight is delayed or canceled, and they never receive their insurance money. 600,000 people are owed money because their flight's delayed or canceled and they never receive it. Now, why? I don't know. Maybe they forgot to file a claim. Maybe the bureaucratic process is too time-consuming, but people are owed this money and they're never paid it. Well, a smart contract, which is just an application, okay, that lives on a blockchain. So you can think of the blockchain as like Microsoft Windows, and like the smart contract is Microsoft Word. It's the application that runs on the operating system. It can check to see if the flight is on time or not. And then if it's not on time, it will pay you automatically the money. You never go through a claims process, all right? You receive your funds instantaneously. And furthermore, you are also protected from the insurance company running away with your money prior to the event, all right? Because the money is sitting in the smart contract. It's not at the insurance company. It's in escrow at the smart contract, and it either comes to you if the flight is delayed or canceled, or it goes to the insurance company if it's on time, all right? So that's called trust minimization. We are minimizing the trust that we historically have placed in institutions like insurance companies and banks that has created huge problems for us. You know, MF Global and John Corzine being a very good example of that.
Next one.
Okay. No, I can say it in English. You don't need the translation. Distributed ledger technologies obviously have lots of applications, and I'm sure smart contracts will have a great future sometime. I'm more worried about the killer application that started it, Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies, because I even have some, but it doesn't really count. The matter is that it's a currency because it's artificially scarce, as is your banknote. The number of banknotes that are printed are decided by a central state. In this case, it's decided by an algorithm, but it's artificially scarce. But your banknote has a fairly stable value that you can trade with and you buy milk or whatever. Whereas if you have a Bitcoin, you wouldn't dare to, well, you might, but it would be crazy to buy a pint of milk with it because you're really more in a speculative market. It's more like stocks or shares. What's the question? I don't know. Please say that I'm wrong.
Yes, no, it's a great point. You know, people today are not using Bitcoin to buy coffee or milk for various reasons. You know, the fact is most people are investing in Bitcoin because they think the price will go up. But there's other reasons, and the volatility is another reason. And that's one of the reasons Facebook announced what's called a stable coin. So their type of cryptocurrency is very different from Bitcoin. It has assets, US dollars, euros, sterling, yen, and the Singaporean dollar, and some debt sitting in reserve backing each Libra unit. So there's something behind it. There's nothing behind Bitcoin. There's no asset in a bank that you can convert your Bitcoins for, all right? But stablecoins, and we've done a lot of research at blockchain on this, and I invite you to come to our research page if you're interested in learning more about stablecoins. We have a major, you know, the first major report on stablecoins that we published called The State of Stablecoins, have a much greater chance of being used for milk because the price is supposed to be stable, relatively stable to something like the euro. And that's part of the reason Facebook is launching a stablecoin, and part of the reason stablecoins are one of the fastest growing categories in cryptocurrency. So I 100% agree with you that today, spending a Bitcoin for coffee does not make sense. In the future, as this price discovery process, plays out, maybe Bitcoin becomes more stable and achieves some kind of equilibrium price, and then we start to use it more as a currency. But that's, maybe many years, if not decades into the future. If Bitcoin isn't superseded by another currency, there's, the chance that something else comes around that's better too.
Just a minute, before you, we have received a question from a nerd. Maybe you know the answer or not. The question is, what do you think about blockchain and directed acyclic graphs like Phantom? It's Chinese for me. It's Chinese.
So there's many different flavors of blockchain, like DAGs, which is the question. I think it's, to be honest, a bit beyond the scope of what we're trying to cover here today. But let me just say this. Today, Bitcoin has limited transaction capacity on its main network. And so people are experimenting with what we call, second layer networks or new types of blockchains, DAGs, new consensus mechanisms. This is where it gets really geeky, to try to increase the capacity to accommodate Visa, MasterCard level transactions. So the system that Libra announced, for example, Facebook announced, should be able to process about 1,500 transactions per second compared to, less than 50 for a currency like Bitcoin or Ethereum per second.
Okay, this nerd say thank you from the streaming. The next one, please.
Sí, hola.
Hola.
Sí, hola. Quisiera comprar la moneda IOTA.
I'd like to buy the IOTA cryptocurrency, but I don't know where to buy it. But do you know about it? Do you think it's a good idea to buy IOTAs?
An investment advice session.
Not endorsement.
Yeah, but I will say that there are some security researchers at MIT who did some very detailed work on IOTA's cryptography that was not very flattering about some of the judgment and choices that the IOTA team made in designing their system. So I would very strongly encourage you to familiarize yourself with some of that MIT research before making an IOTA purchase.
At your own risk. Next question. Next question.
Sí, hola, buenos días y gracias por todo esto. Yo tengo varias...
Good morning, thank you. I have several questions. The first one being, those digital currencies, those cryptocurrencies you are talking about, means that people are getting closer to this type of crypto world and digital world. But there is still a lot of people, a lot of population that is nowhere closer to this type of world. So how can you make it affordable? How can you make it? How can you get it closer to that population that will never, that have nothing to do with the digital world? Because we're talking about the stock exchange investments, but some people are just focusing on the monthly savings or just insurances. They forget about talking to them about investing, and let alone investing in the digital world or by using through a digital platform, because it's people who don't use the internet. So how would you make them more affordable or available for them? Because people, they don't trust this kind of things because they think of the tax havens.
Excellent question, thank you. And I 100% agree. I share your passion about bridging the digital divide, financial inclusion, increasing financial literacy. There are 1 billion people who have no government identification today in the world. You need a government ID to get a bank account, okay? But you do not need a government ID to use cryptocurrency. You need a computing device like a smartphone, and you need the internet. And if you have those two things, you can come to blockchain.com and through one of our airdrops get free cryptocurrency. You don't even need money to get onto the cryptocurrency system and begin to use and explore this new technology. So I think that's very powerful for financial inclusion. For someone who doesn't have a smartphone, who only uses cash, you know, we have to help those people too, and that's a bigger challenge, right? But if you have a smartphone, you have access to the internet, you can start using cryptocurrency even if you don't have access to a bank.
Garrick will keep available to you for new questions later. But after finish, I need to make you a very, very short question, and this is not endorsement. Garrick, do you have a substantial part of your savings in cryptocurrency? Yes or no?
So, you know, this is something I personally do not generally talk about publicly, to be completely honest, because, you know, I teach at universities and, you know, people, you know, trust, you know, the professor types. And so I just want to encourage you to own some cryptocurrency, but be very careful about how much you own. There are risks, volatility risks, hacking risk, and just losing your private key risk. You know, there's a lot of responsibility with being your own bank. You know, there's no password reset for Bitcoin. If you lose your private key, you know, bye-bye Bitcoin. But that's also very powerful, having that ownership. You know, that's very empowering, and one of the reasons why I wanted to come here today.
Okay, so very careful with your money and hope to the future. Thanks a lot, Garrick.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody.
The poem is called You Don't Need to Trust. You need no trust. Sit down. Sit back, relax, play your part in the thrill of exchange, because the goal is to know trust is also part of the revolution.
Me gusta tener mi iPad.
I like to have my kids' iPad. You have the mini, and I have the kids' version. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, rather. Hey, it's amazing that you're still here after tonight, after last night. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate that you made it, but I think it's worth it. Because now we have Maria Sefirati here. And to be honest, she is the president of the Wikimedia movement. They run a lot of projects, and probably all of us use some of those projects every day. Yolanda, our official reporter, got in touch with her, and I knew who she was, but I had never seen her face. I probably read some interview on eldiario.es or Hoja de Ruta or something like that, but I didn't know how she looks like. But I think we're not aware of the importance of having a woman from Madrid in such a representative and important position. We all should know who she is. And well, after these days from pub to pub, from lunch to dinner parties, she has transmitted calm, trust, activism, and it all was free for everyone's for everyone to read. So we are here with her to talk to her and learn from her. So could you please introduce yourself and tell us who Maria is and why you're involved in this multimedia movement? Thanks, Oscar, for your presentation. All right, like you said, I'm from Madrid. I'm a trained psychologist. I studied in the Complutense University of Madrid, and in my last year at university, after 2005-2006, I logged on Wikipedia and did my own contribution. And someone tried to revert that editing, but I'm quite stubborn, and I wonder why my collaboration was not admitted. And I was wondering what it takes and I get interested in the creation and editing processes of articles, and before I know it, I'm already addicted to the process of incorporating information. I wanted to practice my English, so I started using Wikipedia in English, and I realized the power of that tool. In the Spanish version of Wikipedia, there were lots of content gaps. Wikipedia was not very solid, so I created a wiki project. That is a project within Wikipedia for a specific purpose. And in this case, I create the LGBT wiki project, and a group of people got together to improve and create articles on a topic that was a little bit neglected. There was a lot of missing information. Most of the information was biased. There was a lot of information related to religious points of view, but there was no scientific information or information from society. So it was a chance for us to do some type of activism. Let's tell a story. Let's tell a story that has always been missing from traditional encyclopedias. And it was a great success. We created hundreds of articles, and they were high-quality articles, and we realized that many people resist or try to oppose to this type of content, so we had to have an over-the-average level of quality. See, I was an editor, but we had an internal editing process, and some of us decided to take this out onto the offline world. And why don't we bring in more people? Why don't we do something to promote this vision so we get more people involved? And this is how we funded Wikimedia Spain. I was the founding member and the first president of Wikimedia Spain. And the idea was to widespread how you can contribute to Wikipedia. We created the organization through a learning process. And this learning process, to me, was really powerful. I thought it was really powerful to get people together in order to promote and boost the free knowledge and the creation and preservation of that knowledge throughout the world. In the Wikimedia Foundation, there is a committee charged of acknowledging these groups or organizations throughout the world. So I applied to that committee to help people organize in different parts of the world to promote, to help promote this mission and push projects forward. And at the board of the Wikimedia Foundation, there was an application process. And in our case, the process includes a global consultation where thousands of people participate. And I applied, and I was picked. And this is how I ended up in the boards of. I know many other places where the elections are done so differently, with your finger. Okay, let's watch the video you wanted to present so we get to know what you do. It's about only 40 seconds to find out what Wikimedia is. Wikipedia is not the only part of it, but let's find out what it is about.
Almost 80% in Ghana, they have never heard of Wikipedia before.
We have a huge list of languages that we've been addressing, from Arabic, Hungarian, Czech, Hindi, Swedish, Russian.
Bueno, pues sin duda es un proyecto que ha cambiado nuestras vidas. Yo no sé.
So this project did change our lives. And I don't know whether you use Wikipedia, but I use it for every single interview. And I'm a very serious interviewer and journalist, and I always double check. But Wikipedia is one of the main sources we resort to. But the Wikimedia movement is not only Wikipedia. Let's name all the things within Wikimedia, and then we will focus on Wikipedists and what the community does. Wikipedia is the best known project, but there are many other projects. Just to tell you about some, Wikimedia Commons is the biggest multimedia repertoire in the world, and you will find videos and lots of files. We have Wikidata, that aims at being the free data, the biggest free database in the world. And there is a lot of power. It is a very powerful tool to run research, to run patterns, and to do data journalism. And this is at everyone's, it's available for everyone. The core thing is that anyone can participate. Anyone can do it. Anyone can take part in any Wikimedia project. So what do Wikipedists do? They create and they edit existing projects, right? A Wikipedist is someone who shows up to correct minor errors such as a comma or a dot or typos or things like that. Or also people contributing to an article, including a paragraph or creating a whole new article, or including images, which is great because it's also a way to illustrate articles, just like Chalanda did right now, right? Okay, the goal is, well, we tend to think that people are passive consumers of knowledge and information, but we tried to promote the idea that citizens can be active participants in creating and disseminating knowledge. Okay, can you give us some examples on how the movement and the tool work? Well, there are lots of examples throughout the world. I can tell you about Wikimedia Argentina, for instance, and in Wikimedia Argentina they have been working over the past years on a project called Wikilisa. For the it was on crimes against humanity. It focused on human rights and the abuse of human rights during the dictatorship, the military dictatorship in Argentina. And this is a critical work. It was renamed Wiki Human Rights, and they just held a conference on human rights in Buenos Aires. And this has been duplicated, has been in other regions in Latin America where they have also been through similar situations. And last month, the Wikimedia Foundation signed a convention with the High Commissioner for Human Rights in the United Nations to promote content related to human rights. So we can make sure that there are no gaps in this field and that we can create and preserve knowledge in this field. And I can give you many more examples. But this is a great project. I like it. But can you give us another one? Because I think there are other examples related to women that are very interesting. But I guess you are the best one in the world to tell us about the best practices and the practices that can help us create Wikipedia from within. There are many examples of people who have worked on the gender divide and diversity. In Mexico, for instance, Wikimedia Mexico created the idea in 2015 of holding some activities or creating some activities to promote women engagement in Wikimedia and increasing the amount of women's biography. It was they started off with Frida Kahlo, and it's been done in other Spanish-speaking countries such as in Argentina, Spain, and Chile, and it's been very successful. In Spain, we have two cases. We have Wiki Mujeres, Wiki Women, which is aligned to the idea to promote the women's engagement and to include a gender approach. Very often, women are described according to their relationship to men. They are someone's wife, mother, daughter, etc. So we try to correct that bias. In Spain, there is also Wikisphere working with a gender gap. And speaking about women who are informaticians, IT experts, etc. And the idea was to have women experts speaking about what they do in order to bridge those gaps. Yes, there are gaps, and it's a great idea to get your hands down and try to bridge them. But what do you think the current challenges are? You already mentioned the gender divide. And you mentioned it. If you look into the Wikipedia article for George Clooney and his wife, you see that his wife is George Clooney's wife. Yes, the gender divide is a major concern. And according, it's less than 16% of the people participating in Wikipedia are women, which is not good. Women make up half of the population, and that percentage should be higher. And then there is women's biography. The Wikipedia in English has about 18% of the biographies for women, and in Spain it's a little bit less than 20%, and it takes specific effort for that. And it's not only about the gender divide and those biases, but we have also realized other challenges, such as languages. Arabic, for instance, is the sixth most spoken language in the world, with over 300 million speakers, and less than 1% of the contents are in Arabic. Less than 20% of the Arabic speakers speak a second language. That is, we're speaking about many millions of people who cannot access knowledge in their own language. Indigenous languages, same thing. Those are major challenges that we have to take on. And then there is also the oral traditions. Wikipedia is based on the written knowledge because we come from the Western academia approach, where we think what's reliable is what's been peer-reviewed and written. But there are many other cultures based on oral tradition. So how can we bring them in and make sure that their contents are also reliable and not lost? Quite a recent challenge that is growing is censorship from government. Censorship on content, censorship on projects. How many people know that in Turkey, Wikipedia is blocked? You cannot access any project. Did anyone know that Wikimedia is blocked in Turkey? Well, I didn't know because you told me yesterday. Well, it happened when with the new government, and we in the Wikimedia Foundation presented a press charge before the European Court of Human Rights, and there is a growing awareness that censorship is growing. So how can we defend free things and keep them free? This is a challenge for us and for the whole free knowledge ecosystem. So what would the future of the Wikimedia movement be? And how will free knowledge evolve? Will it still be free by 2030, 2040? Or do you think that governments like the Turkish government be able to get the tool in their hands and remove this knowledge from us? That's a good question. Just say that the internet, the network, instead of having documents, it has resources, concepts, and idea, all interconnected. Say we have universities, museums, libraries, cultural institutions creating content and connecting to the whole network of data. What questions could we ask? What could we find out from this network? That's our goal. By 2030, Wikimedia aims at being the main infrastructure of the free knowledge ecosystem. We know there is a number of challenges, such as representativity, inclusion, languages, etc. But that's the strategic direction we want to take. What can we learn from Wikimedia, from the philosophy point of view. Philosophy point of view, well, it's a tool, it's there, it's free software. But what can we learn as a society from what we already have? Because it seems that we do not appreciate it because it's there. But what if it disappears? Because it has disappeared at times, and I've missed it because I couldn't ask that knowledge of that window of knowledge. Someone told me once that Wikipedia is like oxygen. You take it for granted, but you're going to notice it whenever it's not there. And what other groups can learn from us, humbly, is about partnerships and collaboration. In the Wikimedia 2030 project, we managed to get hundreds of volunteers from all over the world to get their opinion, or we got their opinion on the direction to take towards 2030. So their input was landed on their feedback, and for 1 year we've had volunteers split in 9 theme groups from diversity group and many other groups, working on a number of recommendations to determine the direction to take. There have been several strategy meetings in different countries. We have invited people from other movements, people with expertise in different areas to help us with this process. The idea is that we can all participate and we can all collaborate in deciding where we want to go in the future. This is active participation, which is very powerful, and we can iterate it over and over again. You can't go wrong, but go wrong after asking everyone. And let's try to build the future together. Okay, it's Wikipedia is like water, lights, or telephone. It's there for everyone. But I think it's time for questions now. If you don't have any questions, I'll keep on speaking. If you don't have many questions, it's all right. And if you do have many, then Mauricio, please give me another bottle of water. Well, first of all, thank you for everything you've just told us and and thank you for telling us everything that's behind Wikipedia and for telling us about what we don't see. My question is it a challenge? Is it challenging to find people willing to edit? Because many of us use the internet. We are users, and we are watching, reading, but we're not involved. Is it difficult to get people involved? What's the percentage of people willing to edit and have play an active role in Wikipedia? That's a very good question. How many people check Wikipedia on a regular basis? How many people here edit Wikipedia? Well, about 12 people, more or less. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and many of them hold bitcoins due to Wikipedia. There's a relation here. I can tell you. There is a link. Yeah. Well, we're the 5th most visited website in the world. But most of the people do not take the next step and participate. And we have several possible answers, or several theories. What I like best is that very often people do not believe that they are able to write history. History used to be written by the elites, by the winners, by the great scholars in Europe or North America. But when we hold a meeting, when we have an event, we see people who do not see themselves appropriate, or they don't deem they are able to write properly. You don't need to be the big expert on a topic in order to add a couple of lines to an article. And that's a change, a very powerful change in the mindset. The idea that everyone can participate in creating and preserving knowledge is quite radical. And we have not included it yet in our mindset. And it's also like being afraid of a blank page. But once you start, you can't stop. Groups that have traditionally been made invisible or destitute, people, neglected people, people left out, they have many more. They have a chance to make their existence visible, and where people grow aware of it, there is no turning back. Another question. You just said you just wonder whether there is a relation between Bitcoin and Wikimedia, and participating actively in Wikimedia. I have a question for you, or maybe for the previous speaker. Because Garrick said how much of the cryptocurrency value comes from its scarcity. Is it more valuable because it's scarce? And same thing for you. Are you doing something to widespread the value of public things, of things of the commons? Do people understand the value of the commons? That's precisely what we are trying to promote. That's a great question. We consider that Wikimedia projects are common good. We don't want to be an oasis on the internet or in the middle of a huge desert, because the big platforms are consolidating more and more, and it's ever more difficult for smaller platforms to grow. We are based on secondary sources. So if there are less secondary sources, and if there's more censorship or more barriers for the small platforms to sprout and to grow, we are going to feel it. That's going to have an impact on us. We believe that access to knowledge is a human right, to free knowledge. So we want to promote, and we try to promote, the idea that this is a common good. And we also need funds. We also need donors. I'm sorry about that, but we do need it. We want many people to give a little bit of money rather than very few people giving much of money. So we're not perceived as dependent from a few sources. We want to be perceived as a common good, because I do believe that we are one. There are not many platforms of the like, especially online, among the most visited websites. We are the only non-profit among the most visited sites. And we would love to have many more. We would love to have a much larger free knowledge ecosystem. This is not only about surviving, it's about thriving. There are big hubs where all the information goes through, and Google, Amazon, Facebook, and all the information goes through there. So will this drown or kind of kill other interesting projects? You know, the neutrality of the internet in the US is gone. Maybe if I try to visit Wikipedia from Wisconsin, it won't charge. Yeah, that's a challenge, and that's a danger. We try to anticipate them, but yeah.
Bitcoiner and Bitcoiner and Wikipedia editor, it's an interesting correlation, overlap between the two. My experience editing was mixed. When I edited a topic that was not very popular, it was very easy, but when I decided to try to edit the tax page, where there was a lot of material and a lot of entrenched views, I ended up in this battle with people, and it was very, as an editor, frustrating process. I mean, I knew I was right. I knew that the editor was wrong, who was deleting my contribution, and I gave up eventually because I didn't have the time to fight this battle. But my question was, you know, maybe you could comment on that, the adjudication process and the frustration for people who try to bring a contribution but run into someone who's opposed to their idea. But my main question actually was more of a concern around public relations, you know, professionals manipulating Wikipedia, you know, to whitewash or to, you know, kind of make something look better. And I know people who do this. You know, you can hire them to go, who have access to editors who have very high, you know, long accounts, history, and have a lot of power. So I wanted to ask you about that mainly. How do you address this problem that people can hire professionals to change Wikipedia for their advantage?
Right. First of all, I'm really sorry you did not have a good experience editing.
Partly, yeah, it was not a...
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Sometimes people become very entrenched. Sometimes they get into battle mentality, and I mean, we know, it's probably not your case, but in other cases, we know that harassment is an issue. There is a reason why we have such a low number of women, and we are working towards making it a more friendly environment so that people can have a good experience when they're contributing to us, contributing with us. Your second question was?
About the manipulation.
Right, yes. This is, of course, this is a concern. We've seen some examples in different projects. We work in several fronts, right? Of course, on the one hand, the more eyes you have on an article, the easier it is to detect some kind of patterns. Those patterns exist. We can tell pretty easily or moderately easily when someone is trying to bias an article. We also are experimenting with artificial intelligence, with automatic tools, with bots, so that we can also prevent this kind of manipulation, as you said, right? I'm not going to say here exactly the kind of patterns that we see, but those patterns exist. Sometimes they're pretty obvious in the sense of we will see edits that come, and I say this because it's pretty public, edits that come from specific IPs that are, for example, an institution, right? And they're editing on articles that are related to said institution, and they are like taking away quantities of information or adding all kinds of whitewashing, as you said. The communities are pretty good with that, but it's true that it is a concern for us.
Un segundo, para cerrar un poquito lo que ha comentado.
Okay, just one thing to round up or to close what Garrick just said. From the point of view of journalism, and this is some criticism or self-criticism to journalists, I think that we journalists tend to be the most clever, the most handsome, the most intelligent, and we need to be on Wikipedia. But sometimes Wikipedia considers or think that we are irrelevant. There are many irrelevant people who want to be relevant in Wikipedia. Does it happen a lot? Because in my surroundings, I see many people who believe that they need to be on Wikipedia, especially journalists, because we are amazing. I do respect the journalists' work. But it is true that we find people who consider they need to have their own article on Wikipedia. But if there are not secondary sources proving that a person deserves being on an encyclopedia, maybe it's more worth it for them to have their website or a blog or something like that, because Wikipedia is not a place for you to post your CV. It's not. That's not the place for your resume. If you become relevant and there are sources proving it, then you deserve that article. Yeah, but there are people who are not relevant who think they are relevant. But that's up to the community. That's for the community to decide. We know that women have been made invisible throughout history, so there is less information. That means that we have to have a critical approach on whether some biographies deserve to be there. And we have to apply all of our criticism or our common sense to know who deserve. I'm saying this because I'm here. My name is Espiritu Santo, the Holy Ghost, but I'm not here as such. I'm here in the shape of a dove. I'm a Wikipedist since 2007, and I have the feeling that editing on Wikipedia is more and more difficult. Editing on Wikipedia back in 2007, it was like editing on a Word file. Now it's much more difficult. Now you have to load the information on Wikidata, and it's much more complicated. So the paperwork, all the bureaucracy, all the things that you need to do are more and more complicated. And many people who try to write something on Wikipedia have their articles erased or deleted. So it's more and more complex. Do you have any ideas on how to sort that out or to facilitate it, make it more simple? But yeah, back in 2007, there was a lot to do. We only had our 5 pillars and a few other policies. Our policies is the rules the community has chosen and approved. And every language has their own community with their own rules. So I remember that back then, and you probably remember that too, we were creating the policies on how to organize ourselves. Every system tends to more complexity, and that's not necessarily something bad. The lack of norms or protocols can lead to randomness, to be arbitrary, to have different people behaving in very different ways. But for instance, Wikipedia in English has thousands of policies, and it's very hard to keep up with it. That's not easy because it's decided by the community itself. And regarding editing itself, I think it's been more simple. Now you don't need to edit with HTML. Now you have the visual editor, and it makes it so much more simple. And instead of having to write all those HTML lines, you can just type whatever you want to write, and that's it. And then you click on save. I think that a new user could be a little bit lost on how to move around, but this solution for that would be groups and member organizations. The editathon, the editing marathons, those are great ideas in order to learn how to use it. And it works, and it helps create an online community, and it has and it helps people keep on doing it. That's much easier to do than trying to figure it out from home alone. There are many projects in Spain in many regions, so just drop by and spend a morning in one of those gatherings and learn the basics. There are some weekly workshops, and you can attend and get an idea on how to do it, and you can be supported, and you can avoid some mistakes. Rather than a question, I feel a little bit curious. My mate, Carlos, and myself are a bit curious about this. How many anonymous people are editing Wikipedia? Most of them are anonymous people, unknown people. It is a possibility. It's probably more convenient to have an account because it can make it easier. But most of the contributions are unnamed. Yeah, especially at a time where our data is so important. It's important to have sites or movements such as Wikimedia where it doesn't take so much data to participate. That's it. That's it. Done. You have to finish there. Stop it. Just two things. Two things. Just very, very quickly. Well, you can't say that there is someone else coming after me because I know there is no one else. So just let me. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to know how your daily life is as a president of, as the chair of Wikimedia. How is it live for you on a tough day and also on an easy day? Do you fly to San Francisco on a regular day and then, how is it like? In the Wikimedia Foundation, 2/3 of our staff work from home, so there is a huge time difference. I start working at 7 p.m. because it's at 10 p.m. in San Francisco, and that's when I start the meetings. There are pros and cons. Sometimes it's hard to have people from all over the world online at the same time. At the board meetings, 60% are women, 40% are not white, and we are all over the world. There is people from Bahrain, Ukraine, Israel, and we believe that was intentional because we believe that that improves the decision making. But sometimes we do need to wait for a full day to get an answer from the other side of the planet. But what happens whenever there is something going on? Like last week, we had an attack on Wikipedia and the service was denied and it crashed everywhere in the planet. And we had to tackle that. We didn't know when it was a state or a hacker wannabe. It was actually a hacker wannabe. And we managed to give a very rapid response. We brought up the site and it started working again very soon. But we had lots of people working on it for the weekend, during the weekend. So yeah, there is a legal team, a technical team, and an executive team, and they were all working together and looking into contingency plans, informing the board in case a decision wasn't necessary. It's important to share information because that's what helps us make better decisions. Like I said at the beginning, I didn't know Maria very well. As you know, I read a lot about her, and she is a woman. She is from Madrid. Last question, Real Madrid or Atlético de Madrid? Real Madrid. That was an easy one. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, Maria.
Y esta es nuestra.
And this is our and your history, counted and told from paragraphs without any bias. The defeated are powerful. They raise and they defend the word.
Ya estamos aquí. Yo no sé.
Well, here we are again. I don't know if you have the same feeling, because I am like craving for more, but we have to wait for one full year for the new edition of Empodera Live. I want to thank again. I want to thank one more year, Ruth Sarabia and Julio. What a great couple of professionals. They make an effort to bring the best of each person. They also support us. They make everything possible for us to be here. Every year they make this venue at our disposal, and they also get personally involved in order to try and make the most of this event and disseminate what we do. So this is not just something that stays here in Malaga or in our hearts. This is really disseminated to the rest of the world, so that the effort you've all made to being here today is shared by everyone. I now want to give the floor to Ruth to start with. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Cibervoluntarios, the soul of Empodera Live. We would be blind in the Malaga City Council if we didn't support Empodera Live since the beginning. I think it's a triumph for Malaga to having gotten involved in this event. I think this is the best venue this event could have. And as Yolanda was saying, I'm always craving for more people, for more editions, for more women. We try to bridge the gender divide, and little by little we thrive. And I want more people to follow us. I want more people to come to this theater, to this venue, because this is a great experience, and I'm proud of Malaga to have been able to host this event and bring in so many people to Malaga to get to know each other, to know what they do. And we always try to disseminate it further so that many more people know about Empodera Live. I've been talking to some of you. We've been working on the streaming channel, but I want more, because I know that not just the associations, the collectivities, individuals who've come here today are just a small representation of all the people who'd like to be here, who'd like to get involved in this Empodera Live. So we'll be working towards it in the years to come, because we want to make the dissemination, the communication better, so that more and more people come to Malaga. We've known each other for more than 25 or 30 years. We were saying to each other earlier this morning that we are getting older and older, and we are getting to know more and more people. We're meeting more and more people, and this is just great, not just from a professional point of view, but from a personal point of view, because this is a great opportunity for networking, also for identifying our homework, because we want to make it richer, so that Empodera 2020 will be 100% success. So thank you for staying through the 2 days up to the closing session. Thank you. And you, the audience and the speakers, deserve an applause. So here's to you.
Muchísimas gracias, Ruth.
Thank you, Ruth. And now I'd like to give the floor to Julio.
Well, Ruth spoke on behalf of the city. I would speak on behalf of United Nations Institute for Training Research, of UNITAR, as the director of the International Training Center for Authorities and Leaders based in Malaga. We have an alliance, a partnership with Civil Voluntaries Foundation, and we are very proud of being here 1 year, another year, another year. I would just say that for us, it's also impressive to see the work that has been done, and that is very impressive. That I'm very sure that the same that happened to us a few years ago when we met Jack Dorsey or other people, and we said, oh, okay, these people are going to do excellent contribution to the world, and we could see. I'm sure that you are going to give excellent contribution to the world, to the 2030 agenda, and to the Sustainable Development Goals. And everything is under the Sustainable Development Goals. We cannot move on. Even we are in the public or in the private sector, without thinking we have global challenges. And we need to think global and act local. Local, how some people call it. So for the cities, it's very, very nice that we can have all this discussion, we can do all this networking, and we'll be in touch. As Ruth said, even myself, yesterday we had some talks, and I have too many things to do now to keep connecting some of your work, some of your projects to other people, mainly in the United Nations system, a big system. So thank you for everything, thank you for coming, and thank you for all the participants, all the malagueños que estáis aquí, que estáis siguiendo y que estáis aportando.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the locals from Malaga.
Every day, so we are very happy. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Julio. Bueno, ahora...
Thank you, Julio. So I think that's it. I'd like to say also goodbye to all of you who are seeing us through this streaming. And now,